So it was a dark and stormy night. Actually, I don't remember if it was stormy, but I came across this video, and it is a video about a man encountering a werewolf. And the man's name is Roy Stubblefield, and he's from the US. I didn't know that there were werewolf sightings in the US. I mean, I guess there's probably, like, being a, you know, imaginary, well, not imaginary, but a mystical creature, you know, because it's saying imaginary is me completely saying they can't exist, which, you know, they might exist, but, you know, a completely fantasy creature in the US, like, you associate fantasy creatures more with European stories and stuff like that, but I guess if they're magical, like the Twilight vampires, they probably exist in the US or, you know, in Western culture as well. Well, I guess Europe is Western culture, but I guess in the new side of Western culture, more relatively new, they probably exist. But yeah, I was surprised to hear that. I know there are Bigfoot sightings in the US, but I was surprised to hear that there was a werewolf sighting. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it was 2:30, and I ended up going to bed at like 5 a.m, which is not recommended. Don't do that. No. Get your 8 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep, because that's good for your health, and drink plenty of water. I wasn't doing that, and I was watching this video, and Roy is a really good storyteller, and I was believing him up until he started describing the creature, at which I started to think it may have been something other than a werewolf, just based on, you know, the description he gave. And I wanted to provide evidence today as to why I think that this may not be a werewolf, and I also wanted to do it. I don't know if Roy will ever see this video, and I don't know how many people have debunked this before. I haven't really, it's the first time I've seen his video, and I think the video came out a couple of years ago, so I'm not really sure, like, if anyone's made this before or this conclusion before, and I'm sure there have been people. I don't know if they've made videos on it, but you know, I felt so bad for him in the video because it seems to have taken up such a huge chunk of his life where he's, you know, so consumed with it and upset by it, and I don't know if it's doing a disservice to take the mystery around it, because how cool would it be? Cool and not cool to think that you've seen some mystical creature. Like, that's pretty cool, you know? It's like, it's a story, isn't it? It's something that nobody else has that you have, but at the same time, you know, he seemed very distressed over it, so I thought, how about we go over my theory and what I think it is, and I'll talk about it now. So after listening to Roy's full description of the creature, I began feeling more like it might be something else other than a lycanthrope or a canid. I started to think that, you know, with the knowledge I have about animals, I started to think that it was a bear. And, you know, hear me out, because I know he says in the video that, you know, definitely not a normal animal and all those sort of things. But if you've never come face to face with a bear, it could be quite, you know, and especially in the dim lighting and stuff like that, it might be extremely different in that situation, and you might not actually be able to see it clearly and stuff. And doing my research, bears are actually distantly, well, not too distantly related to wolves and dogs. So they do come from the canine family at some point. And I've often thought that they just look like big, muscly dogs. And he did say through the whole video that, you know, it had huge muscles. And bears do. Bears have massive muscles. He also mentions that they had rounded shoulders. And when I'm looking at these pictures, these bears do have quite muscly, rounded shoulders. And I kind of went looking, because he mentions at one point in the video the bear stands up. So I went looking, and I found this video on the internet of this bear, you know, making news headlines, and it was walking across a strip of grass, and it stands up, and it does look uncanny. It, like, if that was in the middle of the night, and, you know, the bear had mange, which is something I was thinking about could have been, you know, a potential for being able to see those muscles, and it was in an area of the United States that is known for being quite damp and rainy, and apparently mange as a condition will develop more commonly in damp areas, so that's something I was thinking about. But if we look at this video, like, look at that bear, like, it kind of just waltzes across the yard, and then when it stops and looks at the camera, that's something that struck me. Like, in the video, Roy said it looked at him, and it looked at his friends with, like, a human intelligence. And when we're looking at this bear, like, that bear is definitely acknowledging, like, you know, unfortunately people don't realize sometimes how smart animals are. Like, you know, the bear, I don't know for certain how intelligent bears are, but I believe that they would be quite intelligent. I don't know if any specific studies have been done on them, but you know, they probably are able to recognize faces as a survival, you know, a creature that's constantly surviving and stuff like that, and has had to deal with humans and all that sort of stuff. They're probably used to human interaction to some degree. Like, I wouldn't say they're, you know, experts at human interaction, but they probably are used to looking at other creatures in the eyes and stuff like that. And the way that bear looks, it's kind of very similar to what Roy described. There was actually a report where the public thought they found, or actually consecutive reports, where the public thought they found a dismembered human hand, but it turned out to be a bear paw. I'll pull up this article, but it was a bear paw that had like all the fur taken off of it and then the digits chopped off. The digits. I'll read you this article here. It says, found skinned bear paw resembling human hand gives local trash hauler a scare. And honestly, like, this is kind of blurred out, but you can probably look up the article. It's by Fox 9, and I'll see if I can link it down below. But it reads, Alexandra, Minnesota, I'm assuming, Min. When the Stearns, I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, Stearns Country Sheriff Officer revealed a call from a garbage haul, received, what is my English? When they received a call from a garbage hauler about the possibility of a human hand found in the trash, they were understandably concerned. Yeah, that's something I would probably be concerned about. If they found a human hand in the trash, it means there might be a serial killer around. While the object they discovered in the Pope Douglas solid waste management plant eerily resembled a human hand, it was not. Instead, Stearns County investigators found the hand was a skinned bear paw that had been placed in the trash. Now, this brings me back to my point where the man explaining the video, Roy, says that he saw the hand, and he explains in this clip here.
Was his hand came out and went down on them rocks. 5 fingers just like my hand is. Not no raccoon paw, not no dog's paw, but it's got these 3-inch freaking claws on the end of them. Now, they were curved, but they weren't wickedly curved. But they were curved enough so that when they set his hand down, the tip of the fingers really didn't make a lot of contact with the ground. Now, maybe it was because of the rocks, but that's what I seen. And I'm like, that's a effing hand.
That it does not look like a animal hand. But as we can see here, when there isn't a lot of hair on a bear paw, it can look very human-esque. You know, if the bear has mange or anything like that, that may be the reasoning for it. Additionally, he mentioned that the animal had quite like curved claws, but not exceedingly like gnarly curved claws, to where it put its paw down and there was a bit of an overhang like this when it placed its paw down, or its hand, as he explained. And now this could also be easily explained by this. So this is a bear claw, and this is what it looks like. And as you can see, there's a bit of an overhang, and there are those nails, and they're not quite gnarly. But now imagine this, but imagine it if the bear has mange and it's hairless. That would be quite concerning, and it would look like something out of a nightmare, or like a well, a lycanthrope, really. He kind of like put things together in his mind and constructed this narrative about, you know, the gender of the creature and then the experience with the woman he'd had prior. So basically prior, he was asked to meet, and this is how it all led to this situation, he was asked to meet up with this woman. If you watch the video through, he talks about the entire instance, but this woman and him are meant to like meet up and go on a little date at the park, and it's a very obscure park, and that's where he meets this group of guys who then take him on a walk to a shop in the middle of the night, and that's where they see the creature, or the werewolf. And this is where all the chaos unfolds, and he has the sighting, and all the, you know, his friend falls over, or the person he just met falls over. And I think he put two and two together because in the beginning of the video he mentions that the woman in the store had very strange eyes, like very hazel eyes. They had like a gold ring around them. And he kind of thought maybe she, I'm assuming he didn't put like, you know, he didn't use these exact words. Well, I didn't watch the end of the video, so he might have, but the way he was describing it, it was almost like he was thinking this woman is a werewolf and she led me out there to feed her cubs or to feed her wolflings or something crazy like that. And I just think that that's such a funny, like, outlandish thought to have, but it also shows you how much he really believes that he saw a werewolf. And I guess it's not out, like, that is a decent theory if you've seen this and you don't have any way to describe what it is. Like, that is a, yeah, it's a, you know, plausible conclusion to have. Something that's not comical about this situation though is that the fact that somebody got startled and when they were running on the train tracks they, you know, had a fall and they injured themselves quite badly, and, you know, that person will never know what really happened. And unfortunately, you know, Roy's gone these whole years thinking it was a werewolf, and, you know, that's a crazy thing to, you know, I don't know if he's had kids or a family, but can you imagine when all these like werewolf movies are coming out and you think you've actually seen a werewolf, how like 10 times more as like The Order or something, like these movies, and like how 10 times more scary that would be as somebody who legitimately thinks they've seen a werewolf, and a werewolf that kind of looks like this, a bear with mange. And a bear with mange to me kind of looks like your Skyrim type of werewolf, your European type of werewolf, where it's like the hair on the back and then the, you know, it's kind of skin on the underside of the creature, which is terrifying. I mean, to me, the scariest werewolf I've ever seen was the werewolf in Harry Potter, where it's just like a naked mole rat almost. Now, there was this funny part in Roy Stubblefield's video where you kind of get the feel of the age of the people involved, and, you know, that young, you know, teenage or young adult spirit where it's just hilarious and funny in so many aspects. And, you know, they're drawing on this like nature of themselves even in a situation that's so, I guess, dire and scary. They're still able to like say these things, which is very funny, but also, you know, it was a terrible situation to be in. But the way he explained it was quite funny. I'll put a clip here.
This is a freaking werewolf. This is a monster. But when she stood up, I'm like, and you got breasts? It's a female? What the dudes, when she stood up, they went to a whole different thing. They just went to a whole different level. They was screaming and hollering even more now. And then I heard one dude saying, "It's got titties. Do you see the titties? It's got titties." And I'm like to myself, yeah, I could see that. She had 4 breasts. Now distended from nursing. No, these 4 breasts look like a woman that goes to the gym on a regular basis to stay fit and trim, not to bulk up because she's a power lifter or something like that. And the distance between them, my guess to.
And as you can see, he describes the creature as having humanesque like breasts, really, and he says that, you know, that it didn't really seem animal-like. And I kind of wanted to investigate that because I thought, well, I've never seen a lactating bear, because it's never been something that I've just been thinking about, you know, in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, what does a lactating bear look like? That's not something I'm really thinking about trying to explain. But I looked it up, and this is actually what a nursing bear looks like. And from his description, it looks pretty similar. Like, you can see like the muscularity of it and the spacing that, like, I don't know exactly how big Roy is. I think he mentions it, like how tall he is and stuff. But the way he described it, I think you could definitely fit a human hand between, especially like in this photo right here, like it's very similar to how he described. And to me, yeah, it kind of really fits the the story and what he was saying. So that's another possibility of where because like you don't really think about it, because I guess, you know, you think about a bear and you don't really think about this because it's not really an aspect. I mean, I guess if you're watching, you know, Nature Channel, but if you're young and like even if you've never encountered a bear or you don't have a lot of experience with them, you think bear, you think big hairy scary creature, you know, you don't really like, obviously you associate the idea of a mother bear, but you don't really think further into it. So as someone who probably had never encountered a bear in the wild, especially at night in a dimly lit area, it's not out of the realm of imagination that potentially it could have just been a nursing bear, and it being a female bear and then clearly also having cubs, and I'll get to that point in a minute, in the thistles as he described, she was clearly a nursing animal of some description. And now one of the main themes of the video is that it was an area with thistles, and Roy goes into descriptive detail in describing what a thistle is. So I did some research, and apparently thistles are one of the main food sources for grizzly bears. I'm not sure about black bears, but it would make sense that they were feasting on these thistles, and so happened that, you know, they probably have a pattern, you know, and they didn't really expect, you know, animals, they have a pattern, you know, they know when humans are going to be about, they know when humans are not going to be about, and especially a mother bear who's trying to protect their cubs, you know, they're trying to take them out in secrecy. They probably did not expect a group of adult or teen males to come at that time of night, so they're probably, you know, munching away, going about their business, and then, you know, Roy and the guys show up and it kind of divulges into chaos, but it's not out of the realm of imagination that they were feeding on the thistles. So now we've got some evidence stacking as to the werewolf being a bear. One of the other things that's mentioned in the video is that when the werewolf or the creature stands up, it's 8 to 10 feet tall, and Roy describes it as having a very long arm length, and from the pictures I've seen, bears do have a very, he specifically describes the front part of the arm to be much longer than the top part of the arm, and from what I've seen in bears, that is very true. But he also says it stands to around 8 to 10 feet tall, and would be easily able to dunk like a basketball into the hoop. He describes it as being very massive, and bears, they're huge, they are very massive, and when I looked up how tall a bear is when it stands up, it is 8 to 10 feet tall, it can be. So that's also in the realm of plausibility that it was just a bear standing up on its legs. So a horse can run, I believe, around 60 miles an hour, a bear can run around 30 to 35 miles per hour. And now, you know, in this situation where the adrenaline's going, he's literally urinated on himself, it's very stressful, there's somebody who's injured, things might seem a little worse than they are, or a little crazier, or move in slow motion, or anything like that. So, you know, 30 miles an hour is still pretty fast for an animal to be taking off, so I'm not, you know, saying maybe it wasn't a werewolf, but from my perspective, I really just think he saw a bear, and, you know, that's terrifying in itself to have a bear standing over you or that close to you, because it is, you know, a predatory animal and it had babies, so it was very protective of those babies, but at the end of the day, I think these men encountered a bear. So if you haven't watched the video, I highly recommend it. It's very entertaining, he's a great storyteller, and I think you'll have some fun with it, and maybe come to your own conclusion, and maybe comment about it down below and tell me what you think. Fly, little fairies!